The one sure thing, Brian, the one sure thing, the one person we know ain't going to disappoint us, the one person that we know is always going to deliver, the one person that we know everything is going to make sense. Wardlow with MJF versus like Mussolini. I got to sneeze. CM Punk and Wardlow. Wardlow looks fantastic. He looks even better physically, and he's got new gear. He looks like a star. He had clean new gear. He's got a great physique. He has facial expressions. He's a good-looking guy. He's got the size. I think he's trained down a little bit. I think he's a little lighter and leaner than he was when he first showed up. And, you know, I got to be honest, I didn't know exactly what was going to happen in this match, but I figured that obviously Punk needs to win somehow, and it would probably further not only the issue between Punk and MJF, but also between MJF and Wardlow, who he's been treating like a flunky. And I thought maybe somebody's going to miss something, whatever the fuck. I never envisioned what they did, which we'll talk about it in a second. And this is another thing you said to me. You said to me, when you see this, you're probably not going to like it, and there's reasons why you wouldn't. But at the same time, when the entire program is over with, you're going to have to look back and admit that this is the only thing on the show that made any kind of point. And you are right on both accounts. The first one that I didn't like of Punk's little efforts here. And it wasn't a bad match. Nobody did anything wrong in terms of the execution of the thing. It wasn't very long. Punk was putting Wardlow's size over. He's bigger and stronger, so Punk would sell for him. And when Wardlow would go to the power bomb, Punk would roll out or get away. And they went through a break. And he got some heat on Punk, and Punk was trying to fight back, but the guy's too strong. Finally, Punk makes a comeback with the clotheslines. And again, I see the point. I see the goal here, what they were trying to do. I think there was too many clotheslines that Wardlow wouldn't go down for. He'd rock, and finally Punk came off the top with a clothesline, and he took the bump. Wardlow took the bump. There was a lot of them to get to that point, but still nothing to be upset over. And then Punk gives Wardlow the running knee in the corner, boom, and he stops there and he flips MJF off because MJF has been a pain in his ass at ringside. And Wardlow catches him and comes out of the corner and powerbombs him. And then picks him up and gives him another one. And now we're into the deal where Wardlow's been doing that every week. He'll give somebody 4 or 5 power bombs and beat him with the foot on the chest. Well, in this case, they start picking up on it and they start getting into it, but he gives CM Punk 5 power bombs. And then MJF jumps up on the apron and says, "Don't pin him, give him some more." So then he gives him another one and another one. Now we're up to 7. And MJF is going wild on the floor and Punk is selling. And then MJF clears off the dreaded ringside table with the black tablecloth on it and tells Wardlow to powerbomb Punk through the table. And he does. So there's 8 power bombs, the last one through the table. Referee Aubrey does the slowest count ever. Remember the first 2 months of AEW, Brian? We said, well, that Aubrey, all the other referees are dish rags. But Aubrey looks like she's trying. She's trying to have authority. She's got a good game face. She looks active. That went away quickly when all the matches degenerated into fucking indie spot fests and all the referees were buried. But she gave a slow count. Punk is crawling towards the ring. And he makes it in and beats the count at 9. And let's stop here. 8 power bombs with the last one through a table, and you get back in the ring. I'm sorry. I don't care who it is. I would have even been on the train with him I'd have been riding in his back seat if he did 3 in the ring and 1 through the table. But we went so far. And Punk beats the count, and MJF is telling Wardlow, powerbomb him again. And now Wardlow is fucking looking at MJF like, oh, Jesus Christ. All right, he goes to pick Pump up. He goes to pick Punk up, and Punk small packages him 1, 2, 3. And Punk sells, and Wardlow's pissed, and MJF is frustrated and yells at Wardlow. And Wardlow bows up at MJF, and Spears comes in and calls him down. And Spears and Wardlow leave. Besides the fact that this was too much, now the issue seems to be Wardlow versus MJF, not MJF versus Punk. And it didn't hit right with me. What'd you think?
And I kind of knew that was going to be a reaction. That's why I said what I said to you before you watched it. Let me do positives first. Regardless of layout or the fact that Aubrey Edwards takes 5 minutes to count to 9, I think Wardlow did really well in this.
Yeah.
And I'm not just talking about what he did. Look at his face. Look at the way he's moving. The frustration he shows. I think MJF at ringside, how did you watch that not want to smack him? And Punk, as far as selling that he's a veteran wrestler getting his ass kicked, I believed it. I thought he was about to get pinned. I didn't realize where they were going to go. I said, oh my God, he's really getting the shit kicked out of him.
It was almost like the Vader destruction of Inoki in Japan when they debuted Vader, to where people are just like, shit.
That was quicker. That was quicker, and it started a riot. So, I mean, not exactly the same, but I think it went on too long. I also think I had the same reaction or a similar reaction to you. I wouldn't have done the table spot only because you're doing way too many table spots on every show. If you hadn't seen one in a
why
month,
risk your top guy when everybody else is getting hurt doing them?
Yeah, I'm against doing things when they've been done nonstop. I mean, we'll talk about how they did the same match in 2 segments in some ways, back to back. But it took a long time, and it seems like they're certainly setting up. I'm going to guess Wardlow Spears and then Wardlow MJF once they finish MJF Punk, because we don't get rematches in AEW. It looks like they're going there. I don't know how imminent it'll be, because they've done the thing with Wardlow and him, and then they've stopped it and they've started it. It's been a long-term tease.
Wardlow has a slow fuse.
It's sped up since they put him with Spears. It seems like he's getting more and more frustrated by the week.
If you had to hang around with Spears, wouldn't you be getting frustrated real quick?
But look, to the overall point, not perfect. The layman and me would have done it a little differently, but I liked it. I enjoyed it because at least it told a story and it was coherent. And the rest of the show is the problem. And we've said it before jokingly. Why can't the booking of this segment be the booking of the whole show? What's going wrong? What's the hitch in the system?
You know, and that's with this segment, you can argue or discuss the psychology of it. And, well, would I have done, how many power bombs would I have done, or would I have done the table or whatever? But you see it makes a point, even if it might have been the wrong point, even if it might have got people too into MJF versus Wardlow before we've had MJF versus Punk. But at least you can discuss it rationally. Most of the rest of the segments on these programs, there's no positive spin you can put on them. They just suck. So, like you said, at the end of the program, I realized, even if I didn't like it, it made a point.
And you said something earlier. By the way, no one insulted you. Everyone treated this the way it should be treated, despite Spears' outfit. But Wardlow looked like a star. I mean, this was like something that would have worked. These people would have worked on Raw when Raw worked. MJF, Wardlow, CM Punk, they seemed like main event wrestling personalities. Wardlow really impressed me here. Like we said, it's the rest of the show typically. And we didn't even have Bryan Danielson this week. So that really sucked. And it really took anywhere from 20 minutes to 45 minutes of good wrestling out of the show. But I can't complain too much. And from week to week, this is the one thing that's coherent on that show, MJF and Punk. And we'll see if that goes into MJF and Wardlow.
Do you think that they were watching the Terry Gordy, Ted DiBiase Georgia tape when they came up with the
pile
concept
drivers
of this, the pile drivers?
I don't know. I mean, I would think, based on stuff I've read, it seems like MJF may like wrestling history. I think I've read stuff with Punk where he says in the past that I'm sure he likes wrestling history more than a lot of the current stuff I would guess, actually. But who knows? I mean, there's a lot of different things. I saw someone point out, Bret Hart, the way he was selling the power bombs from Wardlow was very reminiscent of Bret Hart, the way he would sell being defeated and beaten down.
Well, here's what I was going to say. The reason for that is because I remember, and what was it, 1981 or was it 1980?
I believe it was 81, I want to say.
81.
Yeah.
Freebirds in Georgia, they were the reason why people would drive 30 or 40 miles, me being one of them, each way to see cable before everybody had cable, because the Freebirds were on TBS, Georgia Championship Wrestling. And that show where you had Ted DiBiase, you had all the fucking major NWA stars, you had Ric Flair, whatever. Got to see this show. So who was DiBiase's partner in that match?
In that match?
Was it? It wasn't when he was teamed with Frazier, was it?
I was going to say, I don't think it was Frazier. I got to double check because you know what? They did bring the JYD in. Let me double check who his partner
It might have been Dog, but the point is, what everybody was up in arms at the time was they did an angle where Gordy, in this match, Freebirds versus DiBiase and, well, it was Freebirds, Gordy, and Roberts, and Michael Hayes was on the floor against DiBiase, and I think it might have been Dog. But while the referee is distracted, Gordy gives Ted DiBiase a pile driver in the ring, and he's selling like crazy. And then they're getting heat on DiBiase, and they distract the referee again, and 2 pile drivers. Holy shit. And then they boom, 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 and then they distract and 3 pile drivers. And now the girls in the TBS studio are screaming at the top of their lungs to break glass because they think that DiBiase is about to die. And then that's when it happened. They chuck him out on the concrete floor in the studio, and they draw the referee's attention, and Gordy gives DiBiase the 4th pile driver on the concrete floor. And that's when he goes into twitching convulsions, and he's laying there, and he can't get up. And then some of the other baby faces, I can't remember what, because they kept saying, Gordon Soley kept saying, the referee is not aware of what's happened to DiBiase. The referee would stop this match if he had seen what they had done to DiBiase. And finally, a bunch of the baby faces just ran out and fucking stopped the match after that pile driver on the floor. And they went to break. They came back. They had called an ambulance. They had a real ambulance, and they called a real EMT crew into the studio. And you saw him putting DiBiase on the goddamn wheelie stretcher and taking him out. And that was not only one of the most memorable TV wrestling angles on any show of the era and had everybody talking about it, but there was also consternation among the very small amount of smart fans in the country at that time, and guys in the business going, what the fuck were they doing? 4 pile drivers, it's bullshit. It's unbelievable. And they were well done pile drivers. Gordy had a great pile driver. DiBiase knew how to sell them. They looked good. They looked like something you didn't want to take. But at that point in time in the wrestling business, people were conditioned that if you were pile driven once, maybe twice, you're going to the hospital. This was 4, and one of them on the concrete. And of course, he did go to the hospital, but there were people in the business saying, that's bullshit. They're going too far. They're going to set up unrealistic expectations amongst the fans and or, cause us to have to fucking kill ourselves by going too far. It was a debate. It was a well-done angle that put heat on the issue and got the Freebirds over even more, but it was also controversial in the business. Here is double that amount of a move, including one not just on the concrete floor, but through a table first. But the guy, instead of riding an ambulance to the hospital, he crawls back in the ring and does a small package. Other
than the small package, he was selling nonstop. There was no point that CM Punk jumped up. And I hate that you have to give a disclaimer, but so many guys don't sell anything. He at least sold it like he was dead.
Yes.
Except for the roll-up.
And that's why I'm saying DiBiase did the same thing. And it was great to watch on TV, and people traded that tape like crazy. And oh my God, I've seen 15th generation copies of that fucking tape. People were so anxious to get it, but it did provoke the same amount of conversation that this is. Was it too much? And was it unnecessary? And you can see it either one of both ways. So it was well done, a little too far.